Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today I want to talk about how the governments of the world are basically in cahoots with one another to cover up the UFO and extraterrestrial reality phenomenon. And this has been going on since at least the 1950s. I'm going to start with some information that you could find in a book written by British UFO investigator Timothy Good. He's actually written some very good books on this subject, and the book I'm going to refer to is Need to Know, the UFOs, the Military, and Intelligence by Timothy Good. It's an excellent book. I highly recommend it if you're interested in this subject. But we know, based on a lot of different reports from different people from across the world, that they're all in cahoots. And at least the 1950s. And I don't know, I'm wondering who the lead is on this. I would imagine it's probably the United States of America. They're probably the lead on this. But I believe that there's like majestic 12 type groups within a lot of different governments of the world. A lot of the allies and of the United States, as well as NATO members. I'm sure that there's some sort of individual groups within those governments that know what's going on and have for years helped to cover it up, helped to keep this information from the public. And in Timothy Good's book, Need to Know, I'm going to, from pages 233 and 234, I'm going to read something here. There was a guy named Dr. Olevo Fontes, and Dr. Fontes, in a letter, he was the representative at the time for the Brazilian representative for the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, also known as APRO. And it was a major worldwide UFO organization founded by Coral Lorenzen in 1952. In a long letter to Lorenzen in February of 1958, Fontes revealed a great deal of information provided to him unofficially by Brazilian Air Force and Navy intelligence officers, anxious to obtain Fontes's collaboration. Relevant to UFO hostility, for example, Fontes learned the following during a meeting with two Navy sources. "We have already lost many planes attempting to shoot down one of them. We have no defense against them. They outperform easily any of our fighters. Guided missiles are also useless. They can fly still faster than any of them and can even maneuver around them as if they were toys. Or they can interfere with their electronic instruments and make them useless soon after launch. Or, if they like, they can explode them before they reach their target. They have caused the crash of military planes, propeller or jet type, and airliners by stalling their engines through interference with their electric systems. We don't know yet if this is a side effect of their powerful magnetic field or the result of some kind of weapon, possibly a high-frequency beam of some sort. They have also a horribly destructive long-range weapon which has been used mercilessly on our fighters. In one case, for example, a United States Navy interceptor with a crew of 2 was scrambled to go after a UFO. Their mission was, as usual, to make it land or to shoot it down if necessary. They used their guns. The answer was immediate and terrifying. Instantly, all metallic parts of their plane were disintegrated into thousands of fragments, and they found themselves suddenly seated in the air. Non-metallic pieces or objects weren't affected. One of them was killed, but the other lived to tell the story. We have evidence that this tremendous weapon is an ultrasonic beam of some sort which disrupts the molecular cohesion of any metallic structure. They have means to paralyze our radar systems too, to interfere with our radios and television, and to short-circuit our electric power plants. There is an exchange of information through intelligence services, and top-secret conferences are held periodically to discuss new developments, Fontes was told. The Brazilian Navy, for example, receives monthly classified reports from the United States Navy and sends back to them any information available. Here in Brazil, only the persons who work on the problem know the real situation. Intelligence officers in the Army, Navy, and Air Force, some high-ranking officers in the High Command. the National Security Council and a few scientists whose activities are connected with it, and a few members of certain civilian organizations doing research for military projects. All information about the UFO subject from the military is not only classified or reserved for official use, it is top secret. Civilian authorities and military officers in general are not entitled to know. Even our president is not informed of the whole truth. In this regard, Dr. Fontes was informed by the Brazilian Navy intelligence sources about the state of play at that time. And this is what he said. This is what he said in his letter. Military authorities throughout the world are agreed that the people are not entitled to know anything about the problem. Some military groups believe that such knowledge would be a tremendous shock, enough to paralyze the life in our countries for many years. The probability of hostile UFO interference is still estimated as 90%. There is a 10% probability that their hostility is only a consequence of our attacks against their ships. Because of this possibility, we are attempting now to make them aware that we would like to make a peaceful contact. So the orders now are to avoid any further attacks against their craft. This policy has been adopted generally, with the exception of some countries which still have fools in their air forces who think otherwise. Now, I highly recommend this book, Need to Know, by Timothy Good. I'll leave a link for it in the description for anyone who's interested in expanding their knowledge on this. But there's a lot to break down there. First, before we get into the fact that the governments of the world are in cahoots, and this is going on obviously for a long time. And this letter was written in 1958, so you could imagine how long this has been going on. As you know, since at least the 1950s, that there's been some sort of agreements made between different countries of the world with regard to UFOs and the extraterrestrial reality. There's no question about it. And of course, the reasoning, you see their reasoning. They think that people would basically go ape over this. But it's interesting, the story there, that basically, imagine there's two people, according to Dr. Fontes in that letter, two people are flying in a jet, and next thing you know, they're shot at by some weapon, and all the metal that made their jet fighter disintegrated, and they're flying in air, seated in air, and apparently one of them probably looks like one of them fell to his death, and the other one. Maybe, obviously, if he survived, his parachute worked. But could you imagine? I mean, that sounds like something out of a Looney Tunes cartoon, that kind of ability. So, see, that this has been going on for a long time, obviously. But you could see that, information like this kind of letter, like this person was approached, this Dr. Fontes was approached at some point in the 50s by members of the Brazilian Air Force and Navy, asking, if they wanted him to help them, study this, I guess. And this kind of information was relayed to him. And so, what this goes to show is that there obviously is cooperation between governments on this whole problem, on the whole UFO problem, and it's been going on for decades now. I mean, we know. I mean, for instance, in fact, in another case in Brazil was from 1996. I mean, so this is decades later. I mean, it was obviously still going on. The Varginha UFO incident, which, of course, a lot of you know, is going to be the subject of a new documentary film coming out later this year from filmmaker James Fox. And I'm going to read some of this from Wikipedia. It says here, the Virginia UFO incident involves a series of events in 1996 when various citizens of Virginia, Brazil, reported seeing one or more strange creatures and at least one UFO. Stories in the media claim that one or more extraterrestrial beings were later captured by the Brazilian military. Such reports were first broadcast on the Sunday TV show Fantástico of Rio Globo and garnered media coverage worldwide, including an article in the Wall Street Journal. It is one of the best-known cases in Brazilian ufology. The Brazilian government denied conspiracy theorists' claims that it was hiding evidence of extraterrestrials. Kevin D. Randall noted, he's a UFO researcher who actually did a lot of work with the Roswell incident. I actually read a book that he co-authored called The Truth Behind the UFO Crash in Roswell. and he also has a podcast of his own. Well, Kevin D. Randall noted that there is a lack of physical evidence supporting the case and adds, in fact, we have been unable to verify much of anything. Well, I think for Kevin, you're going to find out pretty soon that there is a lot of evidence with regard to this incident in Virginia, as James Fox is very excited, as he's indicated in some recent interviews, that he has a lot of information, a lot of witnesses have stepped forward. And just because, it was maybe at one point it was hard to get information, well, that's because the government of Brazil was covering this up. Because, again, Brazil is obviously has their own little Majestic 12 type operation, and they cover these things up, just like the United States does, just like all these other countries do. Australia, for instance, the 1966 Westall incident, we talk about that. A bunch of over 100 witnesses at a school in Australia, in Westall, Australia, see a flying saucer up close and personal, including science teacher. And then the science teacher's approached a week or two later and told to shut up, or he's going to lose his job, basically threatened. And that's how these things work. People get threatened over the years. Now, whether that happens today, I don't know. Probably maybe within the military itself. If you're a member of the military and you see something like a crashed alien ship, I'm sure it's made very clear to you that if you try to say anything about this, then you're going to be in big trouble. But anyway, the Virginia case is another one. There was a bunch of different witnesses, and I'm going to read some more of this Wikipedia information here. It says, according to media reports, a creature was first sighted by three women ranging from 14 to 22 years old. Sisters Liliane and Valquera Fatima Silva and their friend Katia Andrada Xavier during intense rain and strong winds. They allegedly saw the creature in the afternoon of January 20th, 1996. A biped about 1.6 meters, 5 feet, with a large head and very thin body, with V-shaped feet, brown skin, and large red eyes. It seemed to be wobbly or unsteady, and the girls assumed it was injured or sick. The Silva sisters said that they fled and told their mother that they had seen the devil. The woman did not believe them until she went to the area where they had allegedly seen the creature, smelled a strong ammonia-like odor, and found nothing but footprints and a dog sniffing the place. After the Silvas related their tale to family and friends, rumors began to spread throughout the city regarding UFO sightings and alien creatures being abducted by the military forces. 2 days later, another creature was allegedly found lying along a road. 3 military trucks were supposedly sent to retrieve it. A similar sighting was reported at the local zoo by its janitor. In the following months, 3 animals mysteriously died. Ufologist Roger Lear wrote a book, UFO Crash in Brazil, that included interviews from people who claimed 2 creatures were taken to a clinic before being moved by military personnel. Well, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically where this leads to was that there was a cover-up. People were told to, shut up about it. There's nothing to it. Military officials told nothing to the press, and basically it was covered up. That's because, just like in the United States, other countries like this, they cover these things up. In Brazil, it's no different. It's no different than in the United States or anywhere else for that matter. There's no question that they're in cahoots. There's no question that governments of the world have been in cahoots on this subject for decades. It's obvious. It's painfully obvious. Even people like, you hear people like Nick Pope a lot talking, like he was with the Ministry of Defense, looking into UFOs back in the 80s or 90s, something like that, or 80s and 90s, I don't know. I don't even think he if he knew anything, he would be talking about it. He doesn't know much. He really doesn't know much. He would just happen to be part of this group that was something almost like a blue book as far as I'm concerned. I don't think that he was in the know really at all. If he was, then he wouldn't act like it's still so mysterious to him. He would know that there was most certainly something going on. So he really has nothing to offer to the table anymore as far as I'm concerned. He's an interesting guy. It's nice to see him on interviews and stuff talking about UFOs. But I believe that there's something deeper in countries like the United Kingdom than whatever Nick Pope was a part of as far as the Ministry of Defense was concerned. The thing is that for decades now, countries have worked together, and there's most certainly. I mean, and in fact, the Dr. Fontes was saying in the 1950s that they have conferences, annually, where they meet, very top secret conferences where officials from all different countries gather and talk about how they're dealing with this. Now, there was a very interesting case from March of 1997 that apparently occurred in Peru, and it involved a Marine Corps Lance Corporal, Jonathan Wiegand. And this guy went on the record about this in the early 2000s, and basically he was stationed in Peru. They were there, I guess, as part of a Project Laser Strike, which was basically supposed to be trying to prevent drug trafficking going out of the country. And at one point there was a crash there was an aircraft crash, and he and a couple other guys in his unit were instructed to go and secure the area. But when he got there, it wasn't just some regular run-of-the-mill aircraft. It was some kind of spacecraft, right? And there were alien beings inside of it, and they were communicating with him telepathically. His orders were to secure the area, but he went right up, according to him, he went right up to the ship and was basically communicating with these alien beings in there via telepathy. It was a very strange incident, and he talked about this in a long interview back in the early 2000s. But then after it was all, these other guys showed up. They're basically something like mercenaries, not just from the United States, but from Peru and apparently some other countries, right? And they basically he was taken away, and said that he was threatened and warned not to ever talk about this. What were you doing there? Like, you shouldn't have got that close. Like, this group was apparently some sort of like a Majestic 12 type international NATO version of Majestic 12, some sort of an alliance between different countries, different members of from different countries, and he's taken away, and then basically him and these other guys, and they're basically threatened and warned not to ever talk about it. He did talk about it. Anyway, I'm going to play some of this interview that he did in the early 2000s about his experience in Peru in 1997.
I was transferred over to the section for Laser Strike in February of 97 after going to Weapons and Tactics Instructor 197 in Yuma, Arizona. When I got back, I was asked if I wanted to go, and I said sure, so I volunteered, and I was sent to the section. And we shipped out in March, of that year. We were sent there to provide perimeter security to this radar installation. Basically, this radar station was tracking supposedly drug aircraft that were exiting in and out of Peru and Bolivian airspace. Basically, what we were doing there, we had live ammo and weapons. And one day, Sergeant Allen and the other sergeant, and I'll remember his name soon, Sergeant Atkins. They were, and Sergeant Montalegre, and he was a staff sergeant, E7, E6. The other guys were E5 sergeant, and they came to us and said, look, we got a situation where we have an aircraft crash that's possibly friendly, and they need us to go and secure the crash site. And we're like, fine. So this is early. This is late at night. I know, about 11 or 12 at night, and I was on guard duty that night, so I was already up, and it was my shift. We have 12-hour shifts, 12 on, 12 off, where we rotate our section. So we all went out that night. We got up, 3 or 4 in the morning and headed out in Humvees. We had about 5 or 6 Hummers, and we drove to where we needed to go, and then from there, we had to hump through the bush. So we got there, 6, 7, just when daylight had just started to get light. And we found the area really easy because there was a huge gash in the land where something had crashed, and it didn't break anything. I don't know if you've ever been to a crash site where you had trees just broken like in half. Everything was burned, and it was like if you had almost cut like a warm butter with a knife. I mean, it was just, it's like something on fire or had or some kind of energy, like a laser almost had like gutted. I mean, it was really strange. And anyway, I was in the front with Sergeant Allen and Sergeant Atkins. We were up front, and we were point basically, and we were like, I don't know, 10, 20 meters ahead of everyone else. We all had maps and radios and compasses, so we knew so we wouldn't get lost. And basically, we were the first ones to see the object. And basically, what happened is we didn't go straight up the hill, because basically this thing went up the hill and then off into the side of the ravine or the ridge. This is about a 200-foot ridge at least. Solid granite. I mean, it's rock. I don't know if it's granite. It's just, it was buried in the side of the cliff. But anyway, we didn't go straight up. We went on to the left and walked up to the top of the ridge. And that's when we saw the craft. This is a huge ship, and you know, I used to be into sci-fi movies when I was a kid, but this is nothing like I'd ever seen. And when I first saw it, you know, I was scared. It scared the heck out of me. You know, I didn't know what to do, and it was just, it was really confusing. So we all climbed down, and it was buried for about a 45-degree angle and into the side of the side of the cliff there, the ridge. And I mean, this is a steep cliff. I mean, it's straight up and down, and it was dripping this like syrup viscosity, this liquid. It was everywhere, all down everywhere when we went down there, because there was plants and everything. And it was weird. It was a purplish green color, and it was a greenish purple. And it kind of like fluctuated. Like you couldn't really, when you'd look at it one time, then you look at it again, and it would like, it's almost like it. I don't know if it was like alive and it was just changing, but every time you looked at it, you saw a different shade of greenish purple. It was strange. There was one light on it that slowly went around, and the machine, I could hear it. I guess because it was still functioning, and it had like a hum to it, like a really bass. Like, say if you unplugged an amp from a guitar, that kind of, you know, it was really, you know, it was really deep, and it kind of fluctuated, and then finally it just cut off, and everything just seemed to stop, except the colors and the shades, and it was still that way. When I was looking at the craft, it was buried, so I could see the back of it, and there were these large vents. Well, they look like vents, sort of like a fish gill on the back. I couldn't see around the other side. And I guess I'm assuming that it was the same way on the other side. That looked like, I don't know, that could have been used for propulsion. I'm not sure. Again, this liquid that had come out of the ship it got on my camis, and you know it discolored them and ate them almost like acid. And then it ate some of the skin off, the hair off my arms, and and I didn't know that until later on. But basically, when I was down there with the ship, there was 3 holes, and I guess I'd assume that they were hatches, but there's no way to tell. They were not flush with the body, the main body of the craft. They're, I don't know, a few inches below. I knew there was one on top because you could slightly see it. I don't know about the other side, but there was another hatch, the same width and diameter or whatever of the top hatch, and it was kind of crooked to the side, and it was half open. I didn't see any lights or anything coming out of it, but I felt this presence it's real strange. I guess it was almost like, I think I told Leslie this, I thought the creatures they conned me, and it was like weird, and I think they were trying to communicate with me, like, I guess telepathically. It's really weird, and I don't believe in any of that stuff, but anyway, I could hear, like, and it was terrible because it kept going, and then it still comes and goes. It's like basically sitting in your car and turning on like an AM station that's not, you know, it's just white noise, and it's turning it up really high. And that's what I heard when I first got in there. This is pretty crude 2-dimensional drawing, but this is jungle here, and this was the craft, and it was embedded in the rock like this, and I'm not sure if this tapered off or how it went, but these right here are the hatches, these 2 objects here. This one was the one that was half open, and you could see into it, but I mean, it was just black. It was like looking into a closet. 10 meters in width and about 20 meters in length. I'm just not sure. That's just an estimate from what I remember. But it was huge. I mean, it was big, man. and it was shaped like almost like between an egg and like a teardrop almost. It looked really aerodynamic, at least in the shape. But the closer I was close enough to take out detail on it that it was not just smooth. There was bumps and notches and things in it. It was really organic. It was almost like art. That's really how you would. It didn't look like something that somebody made in a shop. It didn't have that clunkiness or that tin can kind of deal. It was more of art. I would say. It looked to be that it could have been handmade, but out of what and what materials, I don't know. Definitely nothing like titanium. It wasn't. See, this is the whole thing. It looked metal, but it didn't have any reflection on it, man. I mean, the sun's coming down, and if you got something made of metal, regardless of it, I mean, maybe if it's subdued with paint and it's got a cami sheen on it, you're not going to see any reflection. But I could see the different shades of the craft. They didn't shine. It just like it was. It didn't reflect anything, and I guarantee if I'd have thrown like a flashlight on it, wouldn't have reflected it. Well, the creatures, I think, were calling me to help them. Everything was going to be all right. And I was so mesmerized and into it, and Sergeant Allen and Atkins, they're hollering, they're cussing at me, get the hell out of there.
Why?
Well, I think I think that they were scared, and they didn't want me to get hurt. I don't know. They were real pissed off at me after subsequently. But basically, what happened was after we climbed back up, I think the DOE, Department of Energy people were there. They knew about it, and I don't know why we went there still to this day. But anyway, I was arrested. I had all my gear taken from me by men in black camis, had no name tags. They were older men, probably in their late 30s or 40s. How long was I at the site? Probably about 15, 20 minutes. We were the first people on the position, yeah.
And then shortly you said there were other people?
Right, there were other people. I guess they were government, I don't know. They were there, and they had containment suits, and they had guys. They had a position that looked like, I don't know if it was already there or there was some gap in the jungle where they landed 2 CH-47 Chinooks. They're Army twin rotor helicopters, and they're big, and they had guys coming out in these containment suits. They must have just got there, I don't know, while we were down in the gorge, because when we climbed up, there those guys were, and there were the guys in the black camis. And then they put me on a cot that they had, and they had me cuffed with those, they had me cuffed both hands down, and then they had my legs tied together with those plastic fasteners that the police use. They're like kind of like cuffs. And then they took me in the CH-47, and they sent me to. We took off, and they didn't drug me or anything like that, and I was just awake there. And
did they explain why they were treating you this way?
No, they said that that they were cussing at me, saying that I was a dumb asshole, and that why don't you people ever pay attention to orders, and you weren't supposed to be there, and you're not supposed to see this, and you're going to be dangerous if we let you go, and all this stuff. And man, I thought they were going to kill me for about 2 days, I think. And they had a lieutenant colonel from the Air Force, and he did not identify himself. He might have, I just don't remember. And he told me, if we just took you out in the jungle, they'd never find you out there. And I'm like, well. And, I didn't want to say, I didn't want to test him to see if you'd really do that. So I said, yeah. And he's like, you got to sign these papers, and you never saw this, and I don't exist, and this situation never happened. And if you tell anybody, you'll just come up missing. And he was a real abrasive, just a cynical asshole, I guess is the best way to put it. I was at the same installation, but they had me segregated with Air Force personnel for like 3 weeks, and then after that I was sent back, approximately. All I saw there was Americans, and there's a lot of other nationalities there, Chinese, Germans I think were there, and a lot of other people were at this other base. But this thing, it was really, I didn't go in, and all they did was take me to like a you couldn't call it a cell, it was more of like it was more like an interrogation room, and I sat in there for, I don't know, 15 hours. Those guys with a light. I mean, they put this light in my face, and they were yelling at me, and I couldn't really readily identify any of these guys, but I knew one of them was at the crash site, because they were one of the guys that I recognized, because he was in black fatigues, and he was like, "What'd you see?" And he's like, "Yeah," he's like growling. You know, he goes, "Are you a patriot? You like the Constitution?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, we don't, we do it, you know, we're on our own program, you know, we don't obey, we just do what we want." And he's like, "Yeah." And they're like, and they're growling and they're relishing, you know, and they're yelling at me and they're hollering and cursing, and you didn't see anything, you know, and we'll do you and your whole goddamn family. And they're, you know, it was basically that for about 8 or 9 hours. I mean, they took breaks. They were like, "Look, man, we're gonna take you off in a helicopter and just kick your ass out in the jungle, and we're gonna end you and all this." And they didn't physically put their hands on me, but I was sitting in a chair and I was handcuffed to the chair and I couldn't move. So basically, you know, it was just this like harassment. I didn't eat anything for like a whole day. No water, no nothing. I just sat there. My section was about 8 to 10 guys.
And they all saw it?
No, just me, Sergeant Allen, and Sergeant Atkins were the only ones that saw it. Now, they saw the crash, and, well, at least, you know, the jungle where it came through, they saw all that, but they didn't go into the ridge, because, like I said, we were 10 to 20 meters in front of them, and they radioed to Hall that we found it, and everything's fine. It was in late March, early April of '97. So we're talking, like, when I got back, you know, I approached Sergeant Allen about it, because, of course, he's married and got like 1 or 2 kids, and I went to his house on base housing, and he got all upset and threw me out of his house, said he didn't want to talk about it. And I mean, I guess they scared those guys too, man. And see, I mean, you got to understand, you know, I can't speak for the rest of the armed service, but the Marine Corps, it's monolithic. And when they're told to do something, they're gonna do it. And if you don't want to go along, they'll basically railroad you. I didn't want to keep my mouth shut about it, and I told my first sergeant Powell. I told him about it, and I don't even know I don't think he's still there anymore. I mean, we're talking 3 years ago. So yes, there was life forms in the ship. It's almost like if someone was like reading your mind, and that's the way it felt. And I felt like I felt a presence. It was like supernatural. You know, it was no debris that I saw, but there were big gashes in the rear of the aircraft. And what it looked like is that it had been hit with maybe a surface air missile. There were a couple Hawk batteries, and that's a homing all the way killer. That's a low to medium surface air anti-aircraft missile. And basically, it doesn't have to hit the target in order to destroy the target. What it does is it gets in proximity of it, and it has a high explosive fragmentation warhead, and it basically explodes like a big shotgun in the vicinity of the targeted area. And by fragmentation, it's supposed to destroy the target or damage it so it won't be able to continue its mission. So I think we shot it down. This is what I think happened: is we shot it down. The Peruvians shot it down. The other guys knew it was flying. I knew that these aircraft were flying because I had been in the command center there at the radar installation, and I heard a couple women there in the Air Force talking about aircraft flying in and out of the atmosphere at Mach 10 plus. So these aircraft are flying around there. They're re-entering the atmosphere and whatever. And I believe that the higher ups knew it was flying in the area. These were these large vents. They looked like they went into the craft, but I couldn't tell. But it was a shadow. That was the only thing that really cast a shadow. The rest of this, well, this was another thing, was these vents casted a shadow where you could see where there wasn't light, but the sun was shining right on the object, and it didn't cast a shadow, not on anything. And it was like kind of like absorbing the light. It was weird. This is not one of ours, because in Stinger school they teach you about all different kinds of aircraft and stuff like that. And I knew a lot of aircraft anyway, because I like reading about aircraft and data and that stuff. And well, essentially when I saw it, I'm like, man, this is nothing that I know of. Okay, basically the radar was sitting, and this was again on a hill, it's camied up, and you know it rotates and everything. And there's a command bunker that was built under the earth, and I mean it looks like Star Wars in there. And I mean it's total air conditioned. I mean it's really nice. And there's like computers, and they got the you know the control panels and everything that control the radars. And I guess they're linked to other sites, you know, and they get other data coming in. And well, we had guard duty, and and the night that this happened. This was in the early evening, and it was my shift, and I was in there, and I was checking people going in and out. You know, they got ID, you know, checking out, whatever. So, like, these two girls, they come walking out, and they're talking about, well, we got these aircraft flying again, and the other girl says, yeah, you know, they're coming in and out of the atmosphere. But he came in there, and he told me to come back with him, and we go back there, and he goes, I want the logs, because they log all these flights coming in. You know, their bearing, what they are, what code they're squawking, all that. So he gets the books, and I had to sign off for him to take all that. I mean, when you got objects that are re-entering the atmosphere and then stopping on a dime and then turning around and going exactly the opposite direction, you know, that's kind of strange. Meteors don't do that.
Now, is this something that was rare or something that was happening?
Oh, this happened all the time. There's like 3 or 4 incidents where I was duty there that the same Air Force officer came in there to get books.
And do you think these were tracked on radars?
Yeah, these were tracked from this particular radar that were logged in. The reason, I guess the reason they were taking them is they didn't want people to know that they're tracking these aircraft. I guess, I mean, again, I'm just assuming that. So, yeah, I think they knew it was coming in, and they said, we can't identify it, it's violating airspace, so they could have radioed the Peruvian and said, take them out, and then they shot it down. I was confident that when I saw the aircraft, it had been hit by something that had took it out. They were scared, and it was the apprehension, the fear, and then that they were not here to harm us. That's really what it felt like. And I mean, that's not my own emotions. I've seen the creatures in my thoughts, and I saw them what they look like. Oval egg head with big dark eyes, big eyes, a nose and a small mouth, no ears.
And they were projecting that they weren't here.
They were here they weren't here, you know, they were not going to harm me. And that was basically that everything was going to be all right. Just help us get out of here. I think there was, I don't know how many were on the craft.
You got the sense more than one.
Yeah, definitely more than one. Probably about 4 or 5. Did I think it was organic and alive? Yeah. I think that that whole craft, it's kind of like, it's almost like if you had an extension like your arm or your leg. And I think the way they can, I mean, this is just for thinking about it, that the way they control the craft is with their thoughts, and they have no buttons or anything they push. It's not from Earth. Oh. I mean, I knew that when I looked at it, you know. I mean, I'm not doing this to make money or publicity or anything, but I think it needs to be told, and I think people need to hear it. Whether they agree with me or not is of no consequence. Their cover was there to track drug aircraft. I think, I don't know, but from what I understand, that they were doing a whole lot more than just tracking drug aircraft. I mean, they had laser range finders and all kinds of high-tech stuff that I've never seen before. I couldn't really explain. I know that there was a couple of LRFs there. I don't know what they were, LRF laser rangefinder. I don't know what they had those do there, but they were huge, man. Looked like big telescopes, but they had them in a bunker, and it was able to rise up, and they could zoom around, and I saw them doing that. I mean, just a bunch of weird stuff. And then, not even that, we had like a live fire shoot in the jungle, and there was Green Berets, Army Airborne, I mean, a bunch of these spec ops guys, Delta Force there, you know, the murderers at Waco were there, you know, so, all these guys out there. I mean, the Chinese are there, you know, they're out there training, man, and they're training the Peruvians too, so it's weird, man, weird situation. Oh, this is definitely something like NATO or some multinational deal. And what I keep going back and really thinking about that. Why are all these guys here? You know, why would the Chinese be concerned with drugs being smuggled, or or any kind of drug paraphernalia being smuggled into the States? I mean, but the fact, do I think that this command center? I think it was permanent. I think it's been in operation for a while. They had the big D, Delta Oscar Echo on the back of a couple of the guys were wearing like these rain jackets because it had been raining the previous day, and they were in there, and there were other guys that were wearing containment like biological suits. It wasn't like that. It was more high tech, like those big jumpsuits that you zip up the back and you can like wear a breathing apparatus in there. Those guys, there was about 30 of them at least, and they marched right by me as I was being taken away. They were marching to get down into the cliff. I guess they were in there to check this thing out. What do I think happened? I think they went in there and they took everything out and they shipped it back home, I think. The behavior of the people, yeah, this is routine, man. I mean, these guys are squared away. They know exactly what they're doing. They've been trained to do this stuff before. That was the atmosphere, the total professional, cold, unassuming nature. It's just, we're here to do a job and, get the fuck out of our ways is basically the attitude. I was raised in a Christian home to believe that there was a God and that he created everything, the universe, and here they are, these creatures that I've never seen before, never come in contact with, and this happens, man, and it made me get almost crazy, not like suicidal, but I just couldn't. I had to like reevaluate everything that I knew. It's sort of like when you're a kid, you've been told Santa Claus is real, and then you find out that he's really not, and then the Tooth Fairy, it's like now that there's no going back. There's no denial. There's no saying, well, this is, I didn't really see this, and I couldn't really deal with it. Is that what do I do? Do I tell people? But
Yes. See, now that's very interesting stuff. It just goes to prove that this kind of thing, all governments, a lot of world governments seem to be in cahoots. There's no question about it. They're working together on keeping this thing secret for a long time now, for decades, and it goes on today. Now you have to wonder. Now sometimes there are certain cases. The one that comes to mind, the one that I talk about a lot on this podcast, is the Ariel school incident from 1994. Now you wonder, maybe the agreements with countries like South Africa are different, or maybe some countries are a little bit lax, in enforcing the cover-ups of things like this, because obviously it doesn't seem like anybody came in there and told those kids to shut up, like is the case in other places, in other countries, where when incidents like this would happen. Could you imagine now, say the Ariel school incident happened here somewhere in the United States? I would imagine there would have been some threats issued to anybody involved, to the teachers and everyone else, and the kids the whole thing would have been covered up for sure, but not in South Africa. Zimbabwe obviously wasn't concerned about it too much, or because I don't remember reading anything about anyone trying to cover that situation up. The only thing anybody tried to do was they tried to explain it, try to debunk it away, but it's really hard to. You really can't debunk something like this when you have that many witnesses. And there's other things. I think for instance, in Turkey, it doesn't seem like there's it's really clamped down that much. Certain countries, it just doesn't. For instance, you would imagine, for instance, in the 2007, 2008, and 2009 videos that were captured by fishermen who filmed a UFO hovering over the Black Sea on multiple occasions during those years. If that would have happened here in the United States, for instance, I don't think that those videos would have seen the light of day. I think there would have been most certainly. In fact, it does happen. I remember hearing when in the early 2000s, I believe it was 2004, 2002, 2004, the Stephenville, Texas, a whole bunch of people saw things out there. And there was one guy who saw a gigantic object hovering above him in a forest. And, he looked up, the whole thing, it covered the whole sky. He couldn't even see the sky. It was so gigantic. And he was basically told by people, by members of the military, not to say anything about this. So the military doesn't want people to know about this. A lot of members of the military themselves, even people in the high upper echelons of the United States military, don't exactly know, but they are given instructions to debunk these kind of things, put them under the carpet. They don't want this word getting out. And it's like this in a lot of countries. And there's obviously agreements between lots of different countries in order to keep this secret. For instance, the United States most certainly has agreements with the United Kingdom, with Canada. I mean, these agreements, apparently, these top secret discussions, according to this Dr. Fontes, started sometime in the 50s. I am certain that they probably still have them occasionally. And I think the United States government is the lead on this. Now, as far as some other countries, like enemy countries, of the United States, like Russia, China, like these kind of countries, I'm not sure if they have agreement. Who knows? I mean, they might. There might be agreements between them. They may have agreements about this. They may have talked about this secretly amongst them. I don't know about those countries. But regardless, those countries too, I'm sure, have top secret policies to keep these things covered up. Or they would be talking about them. They would have, who's going to be the first one to come out and just tell the world the truth? I don't know. I'm not sure if it's going to be in the United States, but if it happens in another country, it could always just be, other countries will say, well, that country's lying. But if you have a bigger country like the United States come forward finally, and present all the evidence that it has, then it becomes undeniable. But again, I like to know what the agreement, what is it even on paper? Or is it these agreements, the agreement between the other countries? Is it even on paper? Probably not. Or if it is, it's copy of one. But there is most certainly agreements, and they're all in cahoots with each other. And there are most certainly agreements between different countries to keep this away from the public because they think the people in the public wouldn't be able to handle this, and they still don't. They still don't think. If they did, they would tell the truth already. But obviously, they're not doing that. We're getting some piecemeal stuff right now from the United States and from some other countries, but they're not telling the truth about this. They're not coming out. They just think everyone, basically, and too many people in the public are morons and would go ape over this, and so they keep it quiet. And basically, they think you're a dummy. The governments of the world think you're dummy and you can't handle it. Their brains are the people who are sitting on this information. Their brains are much more developed and superior to your brain. That's basically what they're saying to you.